Are we recording now? Okay.
It was an amazing experience.
It really was very inspiring to be part of that.
Day one of this trip, kind of right off the bat, we got an opportunity to meet everyone else that was in our tour group with us, which some of the most impressive people that I've personally met. They have amazing stories. Lots of people have done things in their personal capacities to try to, bring some of the messages that ABMF itself is interested in bringing to the American people.
Starting with our time at Versailles and having private time at Versailles, which is amazing to see all the history, to connect that history to who we are.
Kind of learn a little bit about sort of French history and revolutionary history during that time frame, and really get to know each other on kind of a mini field trip in that regard.
One of my first conversations, which lasted almost an hour, was with Mike Knapp, our historian. And like I said, you get a couple of history nerds together, we can go and go and go. We had a great trip visiting Versailles, the palace, but the real trip started on Friday.
First full day of programming that we had, we got to go to a place that I had actually personally never heard of, the Lafayette Escadrille Memorial, just outside of Paris or within the confines of Paris.
Seeing that monument, seeing the work that's been done to restore that monument, understanding the history of those aviators, really the birth of combat aviation in the U.S. military, seeing the stained glass windows and what that represented, not only for the United States, but for France and our participation, our part in the First World War. That was amazing. I jokingly call the National Museum of the United States Army the 3rd Infantry Division Museum because, and I've gone through and counted, there are more patches in the museum from the 3rd Infantry Division than any other division in the Army. So when I hear Rock of the Marne, it's pretty amazing. And to actually stand and see the actual place where the soldiers of the 3rd Infantry Division stood and really saved the day in a lot of ways, that is pretty amazing. To see that monument, to connect with that monument, to get our own tour underneath and see some of the history, that was amazing.
And listening to some of the Foundation's historians was remarkable.
And then we went on to the ABMC American Cemetery and got to see that location. Got to learn a lot about how that location is taken care of, how gravestones were set out at the time.
For me personally, as a Marine Corps veteran, going to Bellewood and visiting that cemetery for the first time was a wonderful experience. And the privilege and honor to sanding the stone as a Marine, to highlight the service of that soldier and to do that in such a beautiful manicured cemetery was a real privilege.
And we also learned about the fight at Belleau Wood, and were able to actually go out there and see not only the monuments that were in those locations, but learn about some of the personal stories that came out of those locations, and really got to learn firsthand about those battles, which was excellent.
Oh, the champagne was amazing. I really felt like a very privileged person to be able to tour the caves. We had an incredible guide. The champagne was fantastic, and really it was a first-class event.
And then the next day, which was personally a very heavy day for me, was getting to see Bastogne. We visited the 101st Airborne Museum there, which really excelled my expectations, to be honest. I got to see a lot of weapons and other things from the war. A lot of it actually has an interesting wax museum kind of portion to it where they worked with a real veteran, I believe Vince Speranza from the 101st Airborne Division during World War II, to really create scenes that were frankly very visceral, but visceral for good reason, to try to bring the museum goer into what that battle was like and what those soldiers experienced at the time.
But also getting the other side about hearing about, what the Germans did and seeing that firsthand. That was pretty amazing.
It's a small museum that was made on the passion of a man whose family was liberated. That was the first time I visited that museum, and I'm really surprised. It took the American Battle Monuments Foundation for me to visit that museum and to learn about the very important history that a lot of Americans really should learn.
Also got to go to the Bastogne War Museum, where we got an excellent overview of what World War II, or what happened during World War II, sort of a macro level, and then what sort of happened in Bastogne. I know that museum or that visitor center, along with a lot of other visitor centers that we've experienced, were super impressive. It really brought the war to light in a way that I really haven't seen at many museums, like sort of interactive experiences there, and a lot of artifacts that I have not personally seen in the past. And then getting to learn a little bit, obviously, about my family history during that was important. The last day, we got to go to the Netherlands American cemetery. Get to experience sort of what the connection is between the soldiers that were fighting in World War II and that died in World War II, that fought for America, and the folks that they were liberating.
And going to the cemetery and seeing the incredible respect and reverence that our nation and the Netherlands gives to those fallen Americans, that we may never forget their sacrifice, and to be thankful, and seeing what not just the nation of the Netherlands, but the communities and families do to continue to thank and honor Americans.
Which I thought was incredibly touching. We went to a concert and got a Liberation Day concert, because we just so happened to coincide around the time frame that Holland was liberated during World War II. Got to meet a lot of folks that had very impressive personal stories from their families, from the side of those people that were on the ground at the time that needed to be liberated or wanted to be liberated, and that were brought freedom by the United States and its allies, and by their own resistance fighters as well. And getting to experience that and see that was very important, for me and for everybody else. So
one of the things that I find really fascinating about this tour is the connection on so many levels. Being connected to the other members, the other people on this tour, and the folks from the American Battle Monuments Commission. And it really was very inspiring to be part of that. Everybody on the group had a powerful story, inspiring, humbling, that really helps you understand why this is so special and why the work of the foundation is so important.
Sharing the history and remembering our soldiers and the sacrifice their families have made is very important.
How we take care of our fallen says a great deal about who we are as a people.
I think the mission of the foundation is incredibly important.
I will put my heart and energy to that goal, to educating our youth and to spreading our gratitude. I made some wonderful friendships on this trip, and thank you for the ABMF for this wonderful journey. I look forward to the next one.